Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really opening the hood on something fundamental. It's the absolute foundation, you could say, of turning just plain curiosity into, well, proven fact, research methodology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's, crucial whether you're a product designer trying to figure out why an interface isn't working, or maybe a student knee-deep in a thesis.
Or honestly, just anyone who wants to understand why things work the way they do. This knowledge is, I think, pretty essential.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because good research methodology, thinking about the structure of the tools, the kind of rules of engagement that's your map, it gets you from just a vague idea to a conclusion you can actually trust, something evidence-based.
Right.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to get a solid handle on the two sort of giants that govern pretty much all systematic inquiry: quantitative and qualitative methods.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We'll spend most of our time not just, defining these terms like in a textbook, but showing how they actually work in the real world, especially in fields like user-centered design UCD, which is all about designing things based on how people really behave.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kick things off with the approach that gives us scale and precision. Let's talk about the power of numbers.
Okay, so when we dive into quantitative research, or quant as it's usually called, we're basically talking about anything you can count, anything you can measure or analyze using statistics.
Right. This method is really focused on numerical data. It's very systematic, very rigorous. Its favorite questions are things like how much or how often.
And it's fascinating how quant gives us these, well, objective metrics when we look at user interaction. You mentioned UCD.
Yeah.
How does it play out there specifically?
Oh, constantly. We use it all the time in UCD to assess performance. Think about performance metrics first. We're measuring the sheer efficiency of someone trying to complete a task. Like how many seconds did it take them? How many mistakes did they make along the way? So it takes this kind of messy human action and just boils it down to hard data points you can actually compare.
Exactly. Hard, comparable data. And it's not just speed or errors. Quant is how we measure user behavior. But crucially, at scale, we track things like click-through rates, we analyze navigation paths users take, measure things like bounce rates.
Ah, okay. So the core stuff that tells you if your design is, objectively speaking, healthy or not.
Precisely. And even seemingly subjective things like user satisfaction can be quantified. We use standard surveys, often with scales, the type 1 to 5, or strongly disagree to strongly agree.
Amherst scale, yeah.
Right. That turns a feeling, essentially, into a number we can analyze statistically.
So what are the specific tools or methods we use to grab this kind of data?
Well, the methods are really designed for that objectivity and scale we talked about. We use surveys and questionnaires quite a bit, where the feedback is super structured. That ensures consistency, from one user to the next.
Makes sense. Consistency is key for comparison. But I guess one of the most common methods is just tracking what people do anyway, right? Through analytics tools.
Absolutely. Passive tracking via analytics tools is huge. Things like Google Analytics, or maybe trackers built into an app, they give us that ground truth. Which pages get the most views? Which ones make people leave immediately? The bounce rate? What's the average time they spend on a page? And this data just flows in constantly.
We don't even have to ask for it sometimes.
Exactly. And there's the classic comparative tool, A/B testing. This is definitive. You compare two versions of something, say button A versus button B, and you get immediate, hard numerical data. Which version gets a better conversion rate? It just cuts through the ambiguity.
Okay, so we use surveys, analytics, A/B tests. We track task success rates. We had all these hard numbers: click rates, completion times, preference scores. How do we then start making sense of it all? It can be overwhelming.
That's where statistics comes in. We rely heavily on it. First, we use descriptive statistics. Think of this as just summarizing the data, reporting the facts. 50% of the users in our sample bounced off the pricing page, just stating what happened.
Okay, that's the what happened.
Right. But we also use inferential statistics. And this is where we try to predict things, to make inferences about a larger population based on our sample.
Can you give us a sort of simple example of that difference, descriptive versus inferential?
Sure. Descriptive statistics tells you about your specific test group. Our 100 test users had an average task completion time of 15 seconds. That's a fact about that group. Inferential statistics lets you extrapolate from that. You might say, based on this sample, we're, say, 95% confident that the average completion time for all our potential users would be between 14 and 16 seconds. Or you predict future behavior.
Got it. So you generalize from the few to the many.
That's the goal. which highlights the huge advantages of quant, right? It's generally objective, it's reliable if done well, and it's highly scalable. You can survey thousands, and you get these precise, often actionable insights. If that button has a 50% drop-off rate, well, the action seems clear. Investigate that button.
It sounds almost perfect then. If the numbers are objective, reliable, scalable, why do we even need qualitative research? Aren't we just muddying the waters with messy, subjective stuff?
But that's the crucial limitation, and it's why quant is only half the story. While it's precise, quantitative research often provides very limited context. The number tells you what happened. The bounce rate is 80%, but it absolutely does not tell you why.
Okay.
Did they leave because the page loaded too slowly? Or maybe the text was confusing. Maybe they just got distracted by their cat walking across the keyboard. The numbers alone just can't tell you that why.
Right. And that why is often the most important part, which leads us perfectly into the other side of the coin. So now we shift gears completely. We move into qualitative research, or qual. If quant is like using a telescope, giving you that broad, measurable view of lots of stars, then qual is more like a microscope, giving you that intense, really nuanced insight into just a few cells. We're shifting focus from measuring what users do to understanding the why and the how behind it all.
Exactly. This approach is all about depth, richness.
Hmm.
The key objectives here are really about gaining a much deeper user understanding. We want to uncover their motivations, their specific frustrations, maybe the emotional hurdles they face when using a product.
Hmm.
It also helps us explore crucial contextual factors. Things like, what environment are they using this in? What device? Is there a social setting influencing how they interact? Stuff numbers usually miss.
And I imagine this deeper, more intimate understanding is also where real innovation can spark, like true idea generation.
Absolutely. If a user tells you, in their own words, how frustrated they are because they have to juggle, say, 3 different tools just to get one simple task done, that frustration isn't just a data point. It's a direct pointer towards an opportunity, maybe for a brand new solution that integrates those steps. That insight often comes from listening, not just counting.
So how do we capture this kind of rich contextual data? The methods must be quite different from surveys and analytics.
Oh, completely different. Far more human-centric.
I guess the gold standard here would be the interview, right? Those one-on-one sessions.
Definitely. Deep one-on-one interviews where you're actively listening to a user talk about their experiences, their feelings, their perceptions. Now, you obviously can't scale this to thousands of people easily, but the depth of insight you can get from just 1 hour of focused listening can sometimes outweigh weeks of clickstream data.
Yeah, I can see that. What else is in the Qualic toolkit?
Well, there's observations and ethnographic studies. This is really important. We don't just ask users what they do, we actually watch them interacting with a product or service, ideally in their natural setting.
Oh, right. So you see the workarounds they invent or where they genuinely get stuck, things they might forget to mention or not even realize they're doing.
Precisely. You see the struggle, the confusion, maybe even moments of delight unfiltered. And related to that is usability testing, especially where you ask users to think aloud while they perform specific tasks.
Ah, yes, the think aloud protocol. Hearing someone say out loud, okay, I think this button does what I want, but honestly, that icon looks a bit scary. That immediately explains that high bounce rate you saw in the quant data.
Exactly. It connects the what to the why. We also sometimes use things like diary studies, where people log their experiences or feelings about something over a period of time. That gives you a richer, sort of longitudinal picture.
Okay, so we're gathering words, stories, observations, emotions, not numbers. How on earth do you analyze that kind of data systematically?
It's definitely different. We don't calculate means or standard deviations. Instead, we use methods like thematic analysis. That involves carefully reading through interview transcripts or observation notes and identifying recurring patterns, ideas, or themes that emerge across different participants.
So looking for the common threads in people's stories.
Pretty much. Or we might use narrative analysis, where we look at the sequence of events and a user's story, how they structure their experience. And sometimes, particularly in academic research, methods like grounded theory are used, which is about building a theory or a model directly from the qualitative data itself, rather than starting with a hypothesis to test.
So instead of testing an existing idea, you're letting the user experiences build the idea from the ground up.
In essence, yes. So the advantages here are pretty clear. Qual provides that incredibly necessary rich context. It gives you the meaning behind the actions. It's also usually very flexible. If a user brings up something totally unexpected during an interview, you can immediately shift your questions to explore it deeper. You can't do that easily with a structured survey.
And it feels much more human.
It absolutely is. It's inherently human-centric. It captures those psychological, emotional layers that spreadsheets just can't show you.
Okay, it sounds fantastic for getting deep insights. But we hinted at drawbacks earlier. It can't be all sunshine and roses. What are the big ones? Let's pause on that. If qual is so insightful, why isn't it used exclusively?
Well, you have to be realistic about the trade-offs. The insights are deep, yes, but these methods are almost always very time-consuming. Think about it. An hour-long interview might take several more hours just to transcribe and then analyze properly.
Mm.
Multiply that by even 10 participants.
Mm.
It adds up fast.
Right, resource intensive. And you mentioned scale earlier.
Exactly, because you're typically working with smaller, richer samples, maybe 5 to 15 people, not thousands. It's much less scalable. That means you have to be very careful about generalizing findings from, say, 10 user interviews to your entire global user base of millions. The insights might be deep, but are they broadly representative? Maybe not always.
Okay, that makes sense. Time, cost, and generalizability. Anything else?
The other big one is the potential for researcher interpretation or bias. You're dealing with language, nuance, emotion, subjective human experience. Your own background, your assumptions can subtly influence how you interpret what someone says or which themes you choose to highlight. It requires a lot of self-awareness from the researcher.
So it's powerful, but it comes with significant caveats regarding time, scale, and potential subjectivity.
Correct. Which brings us neatly to how these two approaches actually work best. Yeah, this is really the most crucial part, I think. These two methodologies, quant and qual. They aren't rivals in a competition. They're partners. They achieve synergy. The real power, the ability to make genuinely informed, creative, and reliable decisions almost always comes from combining them, using them together. Some people call it triangulation.
Right, using both to get a more complete picture. I actually remember a perfect example of this from a project a while back. We launched a new feature, let's call it the Pro Dashboard. And our quantitative analytics, the numbers, they showed incredibly low adoption. Something like less than 10% of the users who could use it were actually clicking the Enable Pro button.
Okay, so the pure quant data just screamed. The feature's failing.
Totally. And the initial reaction from the team, driven purely by that number, was quantitative too. Okay, let's move the button, make it bigger, change the color to bright red.
Right, tinker with the interface based on the click rate. A classic quant-driven response.
But we decided to run just a few quick qualitative interviews first, maybe 5 or 6 users.
Smart move. And what did you find?
Something completely different. When we actually asked users why they hadn't enabled the Pro Dashboard, nobody mentioned the button's location or its color. Almost universally, they said they thought clicking Pro meant they'd be immediately charged money, or that enabling it would trigger some complicated, long setup process they just didn't have time for right then.
Ah, so the numbers pointed towards a visibility or placement problem?
Exactly.
But the conversations revealed it was actually a trust and friction problem. Fear of cost, fear of complexity, totally different root cause.
That's the power of synthesis right there, isn't it? The quant told us where the problem was, that low click rate on the Pro button, but only the qual explained why the problem existed, the user's underlying fears and assumptions.
And that leads to a much better solution. The truly actionable insight wasn't make the button bigger. It was probably something like changing the text next to the button.
That's exactly what we did. We changed the label to something like Explore Pro Features, free preview, no setup needed. Just changing those few words.
And then you could measure the impact quantitatively again, right?
Yep. We ran another A/B test back to quant, comparing the old label to the new one, and the adoption rate jumped by something like 45%. That kind of informed problem solving, that leap. It only happened because we let the qualitative context redefine what the quantitative number actually meant.
That's a perfect illustration. It shows that ultimately, understanding the methodology itself is maybe the most important design tool you have. It's not just about data collection. Choosing the right method, or combination of methods, shapes your innovation. It directs your problem-solving efforts effectively.
So quant gives you that framework to measure, compare, maybe test specific changes.
Right. And qual allows you to explore meaning, understand behavior more deeply, and really connect with the fundamental human experience behind the numbers.
So for you, the listener, whether you're a learner or a designer or researcher, knowing this difference, knowing how to blend them, it means you can stop just guessing. You can start asking the right questions, using the right tools. It really transforms a project from being based on, hunches or assumptions to being based on solid, holistic evidence.
Well said. It gives the project direction, purpose, and real depth. #tag outro.
Okay, so I think we've successfully navigated this deep dive into the foundations of research methodology. We've distinguished pretty clearly, I hope, between the statistical framework of quantitative research giving a scale, objectivity, the what, and the contextual, human-centric approach of qualitative research giving us meaning, depth, the why.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway really is that the ultimate goal isn't to pick a favorite. It's understanding that combining both, letting them inform each other, is what gives you that complete holistic picture. It ensures you're solving the right problem for the right reasons.
Well, thank you for joining us on this exploration. We genuinely hope this knowledge helps you structure your own next project, whatever it might be, with a bit more confidence and much clearer vision.
And perhaps we can leave you with a final thought to chew on. We talked about how quantitative data can reliably show us, say, that 90% of users are making the same error at a crucial step in a process. Now think about this. How might the rich, seemingly unscalable context you get from qualitative methods from actually talking to those users fundamentally redefine what you even call an error? Could it shift your perspective from seeing it as a user mistake to seeing it as perhaps a systemic design failure?
That's interesting. Shifting the blame almost.
Or just shifting the understanding? It really highlights how the structure you choose for your research fundamentally influences the discoveries you make. Keep exploring that connection.